Well, hello there, David Taylor or Mr Pelargonium, back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a little while. A few things we're going to do today. I'm going to show you how to do some zonal cuttings. I desperately need to do some zonal cuttings. We'll have a look round at one or two of the issues that you can get in this middle part of spring. So let's just get going. Well, welcome back to the channel. It's good to see you again. I do perhaps apologise for the slight lack of videos this spring, because spring is obviously a very important time. Me and Mrs Pelargonium have been very much involved in quite a sort of big project. I'll perhaps tell you more about that as the season progresses, but in the meantime, talking about pelargoniums, I need to do some cuttings actually, and I will also go around a little bit of a go round of the greenhouse just to show you one or two blooming plants and show you one or two of the issues that you can get in the spring. I've mentioned them before, but it's always good to remind you so that you don't get too concerned about your plants if they're showing some weird signs of growth and flower type. So we'll have a look at that today. Now I did do a video on my own YouTube channel, the Mr Pelargonium YouTube channel, which I'll link up here. Now since that time, the weather did warm up for a little while, but it's turned very cold and very wet again. We just had a major hailstone, I couldn't get that out, a major hailstone storm just a moment ago. I'm filming this early on Monday the 15th of April, and it's actually covered the lawn in hail. Almost looks like snow really. But one thing I did show on the video on my own channel is that I have actually had to get a couple of my really big plants outside, purely because I have just totally run out of room. I can barely get down the sort of gangway. I've got loads of plants all down the sort of runs here, either side of the benches. It's getting so tight, it really is almost becoming unmanageable. And it realistically is far too early to be putting out plants, certainly in the UK at the moment. I mean, we live in the south of the UK, which is, you know, the warmest part of it, I suppose you would argue. But yeah, it's generally too early. But I have had to get a couple of plants out that I'm just keeping bud up right against this east elevation here of my glass house. The prevailing wind is generally sort of northwest, west or southwest. But it actually, since I put them outside, it has been relatively warm. But I'm having to be careful. If we do get a very particularly cold night, I will have to just bring everything in and stand it along the centre of your glass house, which you can potentially do. I mean, pelargoniums are relatively tough. They can handle temperatures down to 0. And from now on, we certainly shouldn't be getting too many sort of really cold nights now going forward into the season. But we never do know in the UK. It always depends on what way the wind's blowing. Now, talking of sort of warmer days and sunshine, you will immediately see that I've got my whitewash on. I put my whitewash up, when did I do that? At the end of last week. So we are on a dull morning like we are here. It is actually quite dark in here, but we need it on now. The sun is getting very strong when it actually does shine. What I use is this product called Summer Cloud Greenhouse Shading from a company called Vitax. I'm not sponsored by them. That's just the one that I use. It does the job. I mean, it's fine. You mix it up with water and you basically coat it on. Now the thing is, there are actually very few products of this available. There used to be a powder one, I can't remember the name of it now, that you used all the time. Can no longer seemingly get that. It must have had some chemical in it that the authorities don't like you to use or something along those lines. So this is one of the few that is available to use these days. Well, in the UK anyway. Obviously can't speak for the availability of this overseas. But what you basically do is you mix this, the contents of this is 500 ml, I think, with 8 parts water. But the one thing I would say is that I've been using this for a number of years. Mixing it with 8 parts water makes it far too thin. I only mix it with 4 parts water. So that makes it a decent sort of shade. I think it's far too thin, mix 8 parts to 1. So that's the only thing that I would say if you potentially do use that. But it does go quite far. I mean, I've got an 8.5 by 18 glass house, and I don't need to coat the side wall of the north facing side because it's butt up against the garage anyway. It does get a little bit of sun late in the day, and half of the south elevation, I don't need to coat that because, as I say, it's shaded by the garage there, my other garage on that side. That's our garage. But I do need to do the other end, the west facing end, which is exposed, and all of the roof. So I mean, one of those, and I didn't use it all. The little mix that you saw there showing you how I mix it up, that is what's left after I've done it, and there is quite a bit there. So I mean, that does, if you've got a smaller glass house, one of these 4-to-1 is more than enough, because without it your plants would fry, and it's as simple as that. Now, we have a sort of forum, a Facebook page for the Pelargonium Society. You do have to be a member to be on it, so you can't, non-members cannot access the page. But the one thing that has been coming out is just how far behind people are with their show plants. Now, we are, as I say, it's 15th of April today, so we're just over 2 months to the show, and particularly our friends further north and indeed into Scotland. Tom Kirkland's one of our big growers. He's based in Scotland though, and he reckons he's probably a best part of a month behind in terms of plants growing for show. And I would say that in general mine are as well. I will grab a couple. Now this is Floribunda, and I mean, we got the reddening leaves, which I was going to potentially discuss, but there we are. That's the typical reddening leaves that you get in the spring. Very typical to the UK, where we get such wide variation of temperatures at this time of year. I mean, as I say, it was over 20, it's about 22, 23 degrees centigrade in here. That's into the 70s Fahrenheit for our American friends the other day. But today, it's probably, this morning, it's 9 degrees. So it just shows you the monumental variation in temperatures that you can get. And I'm fully closed up as well at the moment. And it just causes the plants to have a bit of stress. It will even out, hopefully, as the temperatures rise as the season goes on. But this is Shrivenham Crown on grown. This is a Floribunda, but this is very small for just 2 months to grow. I mean, 2 months to go, I should say. I mean, it will even itself out a bit. It will put on a lot of growth. I'm feeding everything now. Well, as I say, I always feed at full strength, but they are still having to have balanced feed. I'm certainly not entertaining high potash feed at this stage. As I say, the show is technically a bit later than usual this year. It's a week realistically later than it normally is. So we can only hope for some warmer weather, which will push them on. But very small leaves, needs to put on a good amount of growth realistically now for the next 2 months, and also get some bloom. Now, interestingly, everybody knows that I always stock my regal pelargoniums very early for the shows, but there is one, and this is a commercial variety, which is actually throwing a load of bloom, and I'm going to actually have to take these off. Now, this is a plant called Pack Aristo Purple Stripes, and this is growing. This was stopped then at the turn of the year, and it is actually throwing some bloom. I don't really want that to, it's not really as big as I would want it to be, because this was got as a cutting early last year in March from a commercial nursery. But there we are. I mean, that I realistically need to take these blooms off if I'm serious about using this for show. Because on Regals, of course, you get completely separate flower stems to growth stems, although realistically in Regals they are nearly all flower stems at this time of year. But I will take these buds off just to potentially hold it back. Right, now if we look down in here, you can see we've got a new sort of break. If I get my little yellow pointer there, we can see this is all the line of this bloom coming up, and we've got a new sort of line of bloom coming. Hopefully you can see that just in that joint there, just in that node breaking out there. But all this here is bloom, and all I'm going to do, if I clean my knife, I'm just going to nick that out. I know a lot of you will think it's madness, but for show purposes, in fact there's one the other side actually, which you may be able to see is just there. So I'm just going to break this off here, and there we are. That's that bloom block removed. You'd probably think it's sacrilege, but I do want to try and hold this back for the shows, because it's not big enough anyway. The body of the plant needs to develop a bit more. I mean, it's possible that it might be a tad too young. I think this will probably come better next year. Right, let's go in. I'm going to do the same on this side. Hopefully you can see that. There we are. There's another one. I'm going to take that off. But there are good breaks coming through underneath, so they will develop. I know I'm almost virtually stopping it again. There we are, there's me. I've just given that a little bit of a trim. I mean, obviously, if you're not interested in show work, you would never be bothered about this. Now, I have got a little bit of a bloom block there as well. We'll see how it goes. Get rid of that one. And get rid of the yellow leaf underneath. There we are. Right, so there we are. I've just gone back to giving that almost a bit of a supplementary stop. And around the other side, I keep seeing others, so I'm just going to nick another one off there. Here we are. Another bloom there. That'll do. So any individual blooms that come up now, I'll just nick off. But I'm not going to cut it back any further. That'll grow through, hopefully, by the time of the show. Right, now, other issues that you can get at this time of year are things like this. You get these immature early blooms. It usually only affects the doubles, because over here, I've got a single. This is Peppermint Star. Doesn't generally affect the singles, but the doubles, you often get these very early blooms that are basically almost deformed. These can be broken off because they'll never come true again. Just get rid of them. It's just early season where they're pushing through under all types of conditions and under stress, and they just come through deformed. Again, when the season really begins to sort of settle down, the blooms will come naturally. And you won't have any problems, but it's just this early season where you have this monumental variation of temperatures. This has got the reddening leaves as well, particularly affects stellas and dwarf pelargoniums. This is a stella, obviously. These are the ones that get really affected by the reddening leaves and the deformed blooms. I've got another one here. This is a stella called Prim. That one, by the way, was Edward's Fin, or Edward Finn. This one is Prim. Again, totally deformed heads. And that one has actually got hen and chickens as well. Another common problem, if I just break that off. Right, now here you can clearly see, it's basically hen and chickens is when you've got a stem growth coming out of a bloom growth. And again, it's an early season problem. It's quite common, particularly on, again, stellas, dwarfs, dwarf zonals, that kind of plant. It's basically where you've got a dual stem and flower head coming together. It's where the plant is throwing all its efforts into growing. It just muddles up to be a bit of a mixture of the both, but you need to get rid of them. Easily take them out. Again, it's something which will sort itself out as the season goes on. But you can clearly see here, these heads are all deformed. They all should just be taken off. With regard, as I've explained, with the reddening of the leaves, it's up to you. I take them off because when they're on a big plant, it's not a problem at all. But if you've got a very small plant, just hold back and just take maybe one or two off at a time, say once a week while the plant is growing, particularly if it's only a small plant with not many sort of leaves on. So just be careful of that.